everybody, and welcome to our bi-monthly now, pretty much quarterly dev stream. This is for the update 60 of Foxhole. Hello. My name is Matt. I'm with Max and Mark. It's nice to see you all again. I feel like we saw each other pretty recently, so it's kind of, I don't know why, but
I just adjust my camera slightly here.
it's exciting to be back. So yeah, Mark, give us an overview of things that have been going on at the studio.
Yeah, so we've launched the infantry update late last year. Started working on an update after that, but usually after the big update, there's follow ups, there's hot fixes, there's planning for the next year. So really, a lot of the meat of work going this update didn't happen until we got back from the holidays. As you know, it was the holidays. The dev team usually takes a little bit of time off. So we got back from the holidays and been hard at work on this update, which is update 60. And this I want to emphasize because I saw some of the bingo cards going around. That is a small update um, with no real crazy features. It's mostly on refinement, behind the scenes work, low key, non flashy features, and just a lot of small things that didn't quite fit into the larger updates that we found time for this shorter development cycle. So we're gonna go through all of it. There's still some pretty cool stuff, but yeah, just to make sure it's clear, this is following the last update. This one is like a fraction of that. So yeah, we'll just get started here with the roadmap. So this is the uh, new roadmap for 2025. As we said, there's a whole nother year of Foxhole. There's a lot of exciting stuff to come. Obviously, starting at the beginning of the year, we have update 60, which we're going to talk about now. And then there's going to be another update where we'll have a bit more time to work on that one. That's coming in spring. And we usually have a maintenance update between that update and the big one, which is going to be the airborne update. So expect the maintenance update, which is more just tweaks. That should come before the big one, and then later in the year we'll obviously see the airborne update, which everyone's, including us, are very excited about, and we are hard at work on that. That's actually we've been continuing working on that, so it's not like we're going to start at some point. We started some of it last year, and we're continuing to work on it. It's something that's constantly going on in the background. Um, and jumping first here to the first set of changes is player activity and logging. So we went back to go look at how something's missing from our logging systems. Just again, these are small little deficiencies that we knew were in the system for a while, and we want to take the time now in this smaller update to fix. So first one here, we added a global event log, which will feature sensitive player actions across all regions. For now, it only shows one thing, which is when vehicles are lost to the enemy. It now shows up in the global log. So we realize this is important information players should know, but before it wasn't visible to the whole world. So if something happened in a region that you weren't in, it would just be missed. And sometimes this sort of thing does happen in the back line, and it would be missed. So we want to make sure that was surfaced now. And in the future, we may add more information into the global event log. This was sort of the foundation of a place where we can store this kind of information. Structure, stockpile, and region logs. Basically, all the other logs um, will now persist through server restarts. So previously, as you noticed, when a server restarts for maintenance or for other reasons, the log information is lost. So that's all persisted now. So if the server restarts, you still all have all that information there that's available. So it makes it harder for a griefer to circumvent the logging system by waiting for a maintenance restart, right? So we're really glad that that hole has been plugged. Another thing here is this next one here is the vehicle restoration system, which is an anti-griefing measure that we introduced a while back, where if when vehicles are lost due to a griefer, there's a the system will take a look at it, and if it makes sense, it'll restore it. But this information previously was not really visible. Like if you were if you're proactively searching for this sort of information, you would go to the stockpile. You might be able to figure out what happened, but it was largely not visible. So we want to make that visible so players know when this system was actually working. So this is now um, the this measure will produce a log in the region event log and the relevant stockpile log where the contents were restored to. So just again, trying to surface more of this information from the anti-griefing measures that we have in game. And then finally, this one here is giving more information on offline players or players that are not currently in the server. So on the player screen now, there's going to be a status icon shown when a player is in when a player is no longer in the regions, and they'll give you the reason for that, whether they're offline, whether they've recently transferred to another region, or whether the player is active elsewhere. So yeah, just again, this is not the most exciting features, but it's just these little things that we wanted to go back and fix.
Yeah, maybe to help frame this a little bit better, because there's a lot of new players who came on from the last update, which was the infantry update. Generally, what we do, even though the infantry update wasn't one of our bigger patches, we recognize that, but it was the biggest one of the year. Following those major patches, those minor, medium-sized patches, we tried to follow up on stuff that was missed or holes that were caused or holes that were missing that we didn't have time to get to during those releases. So one of the things that came up from a lot of you guys' Reddit posts was a focus on griefing, a focus on moderation, and so this is our sort of like what we're doing to help address some of those concerns.
Yep. And speaking of concerns, the next there was one more small thing there that I missed is that you can now view a player's Steam profile directly from the player context menu. That's clicking on a player or in the world or on the player screen. You can now link to their Steam profile, which just gives more information if you have to submit a report to the support system. And speaking of concerns, the next one was on server optimization. So we spent a lot of time this cycle um, profiling and diagnosing where servers were starting to have performance issues, especially with all the new features. So we did a pass on this, both server and client. So on the server side, we have we took a look at the various systems. They're listed there. The map posts, the items and inventories, collision physics, and structures with animations. So this doesn't mean that those actions are more optimized and faster now for the user. This means that those features were causing the server to um, perform more poorly than it should be. So we found some problems there. We've fixed them, and the result is overall just better performance on the server, which translates into reduced latency. It essentially just to get more a bit on the technical side. It's it comes down to how many CPU cycles the server is spending on various systems in the game, and Foxhole has a lot of systems, and these are the few systems where it's going to be spending fewer cycles on. And the next thing is client optimization. So this is on your end, basically how fast the frame rate is, or looking at frame rate issues. So one of the problematic areas of the game is, and which has gone worse, especially since more players are building more things in the world, is there we found frame rate issues and hitching when moving into areas where there's a lot of bunkers or trenches with railway tracks, other spline-based structures, or where the landscape has changed. So this is something we took a look at. Again, we found a couple of problematic areas, and we've optimized those. So hopefully, when moving around these really dense areas, you should be able to see some improved frame rate. And just the bigger thing is the hitching, right? So the spike in frame rate should be smoother now, or should be reduced. And then finally, here is player movement. This is a big thing we spent our time on. We revamped the player movement model that we're using on the networking side. And what this should translate into is players should be moving smoother, especially the other players on the screen, right? So this is something that, as you noticed, there can be other players will often appear to be jittering, especially in a high load situation. So now they should be traversing your screen a lot smoother than before. So we're still working on this one. It's still a bit work in progress, but we're really excited about how this is going to make the game look. Just going to look a lot better in general, both when you're playing and both if if you're a content creator, the videos would just look so much better than before. So we're really excited about this one. All right, moving on to MIDI features. So again, this update is just a grab bag of many features, and there wasn't a really good way to go through this other than just listing out a whole bunch of them. And this is just a subset. There's a lot of other small improvements as well that you'll see in the release notes.
There's mini features and then there's micro features.
Yeah, there's normal, mini, and micro. The first one is finally being able to vault with a wounded player. Next one here is there's a lot more tool tips for new players. What's shown here is the chat window. Um, there's a couple extra things like being instructions on how to submit items from the passenger seat of the small gauge trains. Some more tool tips on the map. And yeah, there's a couple of other ones there too. So this is just an ongoing behind the scenes effort of just like, continuing to update the tooltips in the game and making sure we surface the various mechanics that are sometimes hidden, and it becomes sort of this special knowledge thing that only the veterans know about, and we just want to make sure that we continue to update all the information in the game so it's up to date, and moreover so that it can be localized eventually to other languages. The other one here is the thank you call out, which I'm glad this is finally a game. This is one of the things that I've just seen over and over again. People typing "thank you" in their local chat, and I've done it personally a lot in the past, and I think it's just good that it can finally be here. Um, Not only as a convenience thing, so that it can eventually be localized too, so that players playing in different languages are able to see this. Um, New loadout options. So the loadout feature was introduced in the last update. That has been tweaked now so that there's a option to automatically submit the starter kit, and there's also the ability to go back and update the modifiers on a loadout, right? So yeah, just continuing to refine on that feature, which was new and needed some refining. This one here, finally being able to aim while rotating the camera, which I think a lot of people have been waiting for this. It's just been this strange deficiency that we're finally able to resolve there. More large item types can be stockpiled. This includes Havoc charges, Havoc char- charge detonators, Hydra's whispers, windsocks, and listening kits. I might have missed something, but I think that's probably it. Um, Filling in the gaps on the character animation side, the ballast, sonar, and periscope seats all have character animations now, so the characters don't just stand there. I know this is a small thing and it's not really doesn't change the gameplay, but it's just always nice, at least for me personally, where almost every action has an animation if possible. It just really adds a lot to the immersion of the game. I'm really glad to finally see this there. And finally, being able to submit critical soldiers to locked ambulances, which I think this was another one of those small but common problems that players encountered. So again, there's more micro improvements that are in the release notes. We didn't fit those all there here, so that's it for now. But definitely look at the release notes.
We'll provide you guys the slides. I know you guys can't see the bottom right one. It says submit critical soldiers to locked ambulances. The logo's covering it up.
Right. Okay. All right, Max, facilities.
Facility stuff. All right, so we've added a new kind of map post. This one is going to be a little bit different from the map posts you guys might be used to. So in the existing map posts, you guys can select a title, you can write comments and things. This one is going to be functionally somewhat different. You're not going to be able to write a title. You're not going to be able to make comments on it, but you will still be able to upvote and downvote them. Instead, what this map post is going to do is it's going to coalesce information from your facility and put it into a tooltip so you can see what these public facilities produce and also what's inside them. The motivation behind this was we wanted players who wanted to get involved with facilities but didn't necessarily want to be involved with building one, but just wanted to know where you could build stuff. We wanted to expose that information for people who are already building public facilities. The big departure here, because we're not replicating a lot of information like with respect to like comments and titles and things, these facility map posts can have a longer lifespan, and they'll be more they'll be a little less likely to disappear as a result of just I guess the person who's going to benefit from this most would be like the smaller groups of players. So you don't necessarily need a whole clan of people to upvote your post just to have it stick around. You can make your map post and expect it. If you're just running a one-man facility, you should be able to make a map post and expect it to have at least some longevity. So the different types of map posts that we have here, the public facility one is meant to expose like all of the stuff inside the facility. This is not every structure. Okay, you're not going to get information with like for things like what construction materials you can build or what refineries you have. We've specifically targeted a couple of structures, namely the vehicle assembly pads and the transfer stations. So if you are operating a public facility, the expectation here is that you are placing your items that you want people to take into certain structures that are more new player friendly, more likely for somebody to walk up and be able to figure it out. The intention here is not to expose the entire facility so that it would just end up being confusing. I think that's pretty much it. You guys can experiment with it, give it a try. Let us know what you think of it. Let us know if there's any other information that you think needs to go into these map posts. So we're not just working on facilities stuff. We're also working on just general logistics quality of life. But following in line with those map posts, the transfer stations, it was pointed out to us that one of the big reasons players don't like using them is because it takes so much longer to get stuff out. So we've added this massive retrieve bonus to it, similar to using like a small train, but you don't need to use a small train anymore. So the expectation here is that if you're putting things into a transfer station because they are public and because they are exposed on these map posts, the expectation is you want people to take it. So if you're building concrete, for example, you have a facility that's building concrete, you put it onto a material pad, you can create a map post that allows anybody to see where it is and also to come and pick it up with a 10 times bonus. We moved the melee weapons out of the facilities back or into the factory. I think a lot of people are just requesting that now that we've seen melee sort of settle out a little bit more, we're a little bit more comfortable with it. We've just put it back into the factory, so we should see a lot more of them, and hopefully you guys will appreciate that. The small arms factory, this works similar to the vehicle assembly station, where when you mouse over a vehicle assembly station, you can see what vehicles you can create. We've also added this for the small arms factory, so now you can see what items are available. And the small arms factory is one of those structures that will appear in those map posts, so that new players can find out where they can build certain items. The rest of these are very minor, but I'll let you guys read through them yourself. They're just generally, we're trying to show you that there's a lot of minor features that may not necessarily make the headlines, but we know that that the people who interface with these systems are going to appreciate.
Right.
So with the melee weapons out of the basic, or out of the small arms factory, we had to put something into it, and we went with uniforms. So now the basic small arms factory produces uniforms at a massive rate. So similar to the equipment one, where you're creating 10 crates at a time, you'll be able to create 10 crates of uniforms at a time. But this comes with the basic structure. There's not much more to that. I think you guys get that. We are adding a new modification to the small arms factory. This is one that you guys have been long requesting for, one that we've been reluctant to provide, but now that we've seen some of the way that you guys have been using it, we've decided that we're going to give it a try. So the small arms factory is going to have a modification that allows you to produce some of the more high demand items, specifically 40 millimeter and 68 millimeter. There was a complaint several months ago about the explosive mats being harder to put into your mass production factory. So this is one of the reasons what we were trying to get towards. So now you can produce 40 millimeter outside of the mass production factory, and we'll see how this affects the overall economy of these items. We're going to be keeping a close eye on this one, so expect changes.
Yeah, when you said we're going to try this out, that means we could take it back, right, Max?
Yeah.
No, we can't.
And nobody will complain about that.
Okay. I think that's it for facilities, and we're going to move on to squads.
Yeah, so we've added a new squad officer rank. Specifically, we were meant to target the issue where the squad leader role gets AFK. Not everybody will have this problem, but those of you who are familiar with this issue will find this very useful. All this does really is provides you with a means of replacing the squad leader if that squad leader is not around. Hopefully, we'll be able to add more functionality to these roles in the future, but for now, that's what we've got.
Right. So this next part, I'm going to hand it over to you, Matt, but
Yeah.
I do want to touch on why we're working on this at this point. Because in this update, programmers were busy on the nitty-gritty technical behind-the-scenes stuff of server optimization and all the other various small features that you saw us go over today. And from the perspective of a development pipeline, when you have all these programmers working on that, the artists, they're obviously working on the airborne update, but at the same time, we found a gap in the schedule for them to work on some of the lore and environment stuff that had been sitting in the wings for a very long time, right? So
some of this stuff has been planned for a while.
Some of the concept art has been planned for a long time, but I just wanted to provide some clarity there, so there isn't this sense of like, well, we're working, like on this, or we're not working on something else, right? So
I think it's just a thing too of just like reminding that, like, there are different people on the team who are always working on different things. It's not always like this thing where like everybody is all working on exactly the same feature at all times. It's how we work.
I thought you could work on server optimization, Matt. I thought that's your.
I mean, hey, listen, I'll do my best. I just can't promise it won't get worse.
Okay. I'll give this over to you then, Matt.
Yeah.
which we'll start with the video.
Yeah, I'll start with the video. So, this kind of goes back a long time when we first did this slide can shelf. There was it was almost how would we describe this, Max? It was kind of like there was an initial plan that we had kind of moved forward with, and then we changed things around, and this map kind of came out almost of nowhere, in a sense, to give a better overall structure to the map that we have now. And so what ended up happening was there wasn't as much of a sort of background for this map that we originally had. And so one of the things that mostly Max and the level design team were working on figuring out how to add some more character and intrigue and interest and interesting places to fight and things in the map to give it a little bit more of a place in the world that made it feel like it's belonged, because as a lot of people were saying too, that the map felt a little bit like there wasn't a lot of interesting things to look at. So that was something that we really wanted to do, and we spent a long time and a lot of I'm going to say a lot of this credit goes to the level designers for putting this together and coming up with the concept artists, the artists. This was a pretty cool project to work on. There was a lot involved, and we wanted it to have the same feeling as, the Great Warden Dam, or, some of the bigger cities, just having something like a big set piece. So there's this, I don't want to go into I'm not going to go into the details of like what the story is actually here, but there's a lot here to find. There's a lot to look at. Could be a really interesting encounter space. And I will say, just from a level design perspective too, I don't know if we're talking too much about this later or not, Max.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it.
But are we saying anything about like the changes to the map, or are we just is this it?
I can talk a little bit about our intention. So
yeah, go ahead.
When we make any changes to existing levels, we want to make sure that we preserve the stories that you guys hold dear. And we know that Silicon Shelf has not been a popular map, but we know that there's been a lot of really cool stories presented here that we didn't really want to touch. Specifically, that stands out in my mind is Port of Rhyme is often sieged, and I think a lot of players feel a sense of they do feel a certain ownership of Port of Rhyme. But outside of Port of Rhyme, it's been flat and desolate, and I think that a lot of players had difficulty seeing what we were trying to get at with respect to like the road layout and that sort of thing. So the changes that we've made here, we did want to change how the map felt, but we did want to preserve originally what this map is about, which is it is supposed to be open. It is supposed to be difficult to traverse despite that, and Port of Rhyme is supposed to be easily sieged. So while this ship is placed in a pretty important location on the map for like conflict, we hope it won't change those important stories that you guys have in your memory.
This map was also meant to be a sort of sister map to Weathered Expanse as well, and there's a lot going on in terms of the sort of overarching like story that I think is a lot more solid now. It feels a lot more like they're kind of pieced together. Yeah, it's been there's a lot I could like explain it. There's a lot I would like to say, but I want to let people kind of explore it for themselves. And there are some wider changes to the map and some of the surrounding areas as well, just to kind of reinforce some of the themes that we were going for. So when you get in, you can look for those changes too.
Great.
This
is a small change, but I feel like there is a little bit of a story behind this, but
Yeah, I'll start with this, and then I'll pass it to you for a sec, Max. So this particular asset that everyone knows, when we say abandoned ward tank, like everyone knows what we're talking about. Was probably the oldest thing in the game. Like literally the position of it, the placement of it, it was put there in a prototype, and abandoned ward was built around it. We
I think it was in the combat prototype, right?
It was before the combat 16? Prototype. I had when we did a map that was slightly different before the combat prototype, I had actually placed it there as an asset, and then I built the combat prototype around it. So it's been there for a really, really long time. So one of the things that we wanted to do is update it, because we did feel like it was kind of out of sync with what had changed in the game since, before it kind of existed. So we really wanted to just give it a little bit more love, and there's been a few more changes to some of this storytelling in Abandoned Ward, but nothing that is new. It's more just like reinforcing the idea rather than letting it like just kind of sit in its old form. So yeah, and this was also this was something that we had debated just like removing it. I don't know if you want to speak to that, Max, or not, but we decided to ultimately like replace it.
Yeah, the funny story here is we were trying to remove all of the old meshes that have just been scattered around the maps because they were like the textures were broken, and we came across this one, and initially I was like, okay, we'll just delete it. It's not important. And several members of the team spoke up very, very vocally that we could not just remove it, and so we finally come around to. So we put the task aside, and like Mark was saying at the start here, some of these tasks have been lingering in the background for a long time, and this was one of them. So we finally got around to cleaning it up and putting it back out there, getting rid of the old meshes.
And there's some talk about like immersion and things like that, and this is all really important just to like kind of bring everything together. Like there was just some elements that prior to launch we just like we had to prioritize gameplay, and we had to prioritize certain things, and this was just one of those, and I'm really glad we got around to it. And like I said, there's a little bit more to explore, so I don't want to like give it all away, but yeah, good luck, have fun, everybody. So this one has been planned. This was when we did the southern visual update for the Velian maps. This was planned as part of it. Unfortunately, it didn't get done before we had to launch. It was a difficult structure, and it was a difficult structure. it took a lot of work, but it didn't make any sense to anybody and to us to have churches from a different culture in another culture's city. So we didn't have them, and this was a really important thing. So this is effectively the same as the Warden Church in the northern regions, and it speaks a little bit more to Velian and colonial culture, and it was really important that we get it right and we get it in, and we have it take that place to like again to illustrate a little bit more of the culture, to give a little bit more immersion in these cities and towns.
Perfect place for a fight club.
Yeah, and that too, yeah.
That's the real reason why we added this, right? Okay, that's it for lore and environment. So we'll move on to the last section of the stream here and of the update, which is new and revamped equipment. And we'll start this off with a video before I hand it to you, Max.
Deployable banners. Yeah, I'm glad that we start off with this one. So what does it do? It is for mostly role-playing purposes. It doesn't provide any buffs or anything like that, but you can now place banners in places. You attach it similar to the windsock, so you'll use a tripod and then you'll attach the banner to it. But it won't. We've added some sandbags around the tripod so it doesn't look so ridiculous blowing in the wind. Yeah, I think the artists.
Max,
Go ahead.
it provides a morale boost.
It does.
That's the buff.
Yeah, I mean, pushing flags forward in war was a pretty significant. It for no other reason. It's a piece of cloth, but it is a significant part of all conflict, and it was something that we felt like we know players have wanted for a long time, to be able to carry or be able to plant your flags. And so we figured we'd just give it a whirl, see if we can get some cool and interesting scenarios from these. So speaking to what we said at the very start of the stream, the theme of this update has been trying to fill in holes or gaps in the updates that have come prior, stuff that we know that both factions have been hurting for, and we wanted to start filling in some of those gaps. We do tend to resist symmetry as much as possible, but this update is a bit of an exception to that, because we know that the Colonials have been missing a field mortar for a very, very long time, and they've been looking for it, and it has been a sore spot in their arsenal. So we decided, like, let's just, for the sake of balance, let's take a step back from asymmetry for this one update, and let's just give them the one thing they've been asking for. Here's a field mortar. Have at it.
Yep. Okay.
Along that similar vein, one thing that the Wardens have been hurting for and have been asking for ages has been just a standard AT weapon, something that people can just use, something that's not highly situational or highly situational or just niche. So we went with something that was very middle of the road, something that the Colonials have had for a long time, just a good old-fashioned ATRPG. But this will be the first time the Wardens can produce the ATRPG round. So we'll see how this goes. Yeah.
And finally,
the Colonial Gunboat revamp. Again, something that you guys have been just asking for a long time. The two gunboats have had a bit of a power disparity for quite a while since the Naval update. And some of the problems that you guys have listed were that it's easily decrewed, and that the Warden gunboat is just flat out better for most situations. So what we set out to do with this one was not necessarily to make this one on par with the Warden gunboat necessarily. The goal here was to help give it more situations where it could be useful. So what we did was we raised the front armor of the driver's seat and the observer, so that there's just a slightly higher wall there to protect the gunner or the driver and the spotter. We faced the two gunner seats slightly forward, so this will give the gunboat a really heavy, like, forward arsenal, something that they could just unload to the front direction. And then to protect those gunners a little bit more, we added these side plates so that it's a little bit harder to get the shot into the boat. And then to protect those gunners a little bit more, we so that the gunners can are a little less likely to get shot.
Hey Max, I don't know if there's just an issue on your end, but something you kind of cut out and then like layered on yourself and then like cut and then just maybe repeat your last couple points there.
Yeah, I heard that. I wasn't sure if that was coming through or not. Yeah, so the point of these side panels was to sort of like break up the sight lines from the front direction to sort of hit those rear gunners. But you will notice that there's almost no protection from the rear. So again, we didn't want to make this necessarily as good as the gunboat or the Warden gunboat, although we'll see how this shakes out. We wanted to continue the theming of this ship, which is that it's a platform. It's a little bit slower, it's a little bit more maneuverable, but it has a really solid forward-facing arsenal now.
all right. I believe that is the end of well, not everything, but the big parts going into the update. And again, the rest can go into the release notes. And as usual, there's going to be a dev Q&A post on the subreddit, which will stay active for a couple of hours after the stream, or rather, it'll go up a little bit after the stream, and then it'll stay up for a few hours. And then the dev branch will, if there's no technical issues, it should go live this afternoon. And that is it.
Yep, as usual, guys, the dev branch is like one of the best places for you guys to get your feedback in about our changes. Like use the correct categories when we have the categories up for the dev branch feedback channel, and engage with us in conversation there. So anything that you've seen here that might be upsetting to you or that you really like, we want to hear about it. So just make sure you make yourself heard, and hopefully we'll see you guys there.
All right.
Awesome. We're oh, go ahead. I'll finish up after.
I think we can probably wrap it up.
Okay, then yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought before we played the trailer.
I had a quick trigger finger. Sorry.
No, it's all good. So I think that's everything. Look for the recap on YouTube very, very soon. Do you have any final thoughts, Mark, before we wrap up?
None.
Okay, so we'll see you in Dev Branch, everybody, and stay foxy. And here is a replay of our Airborne trailer.